Hey folks, it's time for the quote of the day, and nature's fireworks are going off all around me right now. So if you hear the thunder, just enjoy it. Today's quote is going to come to you from somebody that you will have no idea who he is. You're not going to know who he is unless you live in Connecticut. If you live in Connecticut, you will have heard his name. Now, this is where it gets a little dicey because I know that a lot of people that, and I'm not you, I'm not talking about you in particular, but there are a lot of people out there that for some reason, I guess this is how Trump thinks as well. Because yesterday, he or was it the third or the fourth? I don't remember, but he said something about July 4th, 1776 being the start of freedom or something. And it's weird. It's weird. It's weird that he would say that because like people think that like on July 3rd, 1776, it was just like people standing around in a barren country just looking at each other like, well, what do we do? And then on July 4th, like at midnight, the bell rang out, and then all of a sudden, bammo, country, freedom. That's not how it worked, in case you didn't know that. That's not at all what it was. That was the declaration of our independence. But there were colonies and things that were happening. We had a country. We didn't have our own country, but this was a country. There were, we existed. The people don't they think of that number 1776, that year, and they're like, well, that was it, that was all. But they forget about the other part where in the 1400s people came across in their little boats, like the Puritans. They came across in the Pinta, the Nina, and the Santa Maria, and they came across. And do I got to get the whole thing for you? I don't want to do that. But basically, the man I'm quoting today, Thomas Hooker, is the founder of the Connecticut colony. Now, this happened well before 1776, well before the Declaration of Independence, and well before the Constitution was ever put in place for the United States. People forget that. People don't think about that. Thomas Hooker is a very, very important figure in American history, and I'm going to tell you why right now, and why it's a shame that more people don't know his name. Thomas Hooker, when he took his small band of, I guess Christians, I don't know what denomination they were, he took his 100 and so, he was a pastor, and he took his 100 or so followers, and they went up to Connecticut, and they formed Hartford, Connecticut. That was the start of the Connecticut colony. And when he did that, because they were excited to leave because they were not at the time allowed to vote. They were Puritans, and because of the rules in the area, they weren't allowed to vote for what happened in that area. So they went up, and one of the ideas that he put forward, and this is a foundational idea for our country, was that everybody should get a chance to vote. Everybody should have a say. Everybody in this area, everybody in Hartford, which, if you want to think about it, you can, when you understand the history, there's an argument to be made that this is the founding point of democracy in America. Like I said, this is a man that was saying and writing these things well before the 1776 that people like to throw around. I don't know exactly. I think it was I want to say it was 1618. I don't know. It was in that area where he put forth this idea. And this will be the quote of the day. So pay attention, because like I said, this was over 100 years before 1776. Thomas Hooker said, "The foundation of authority is based upon the consent of the people." Read that again. The foundation of authority is based upon the consent of the people. You've heard this language before. This isn't anything new. Why would you be shocked by that? It's a very simple quote. However, if you don't understand it, like the people that are just going to read this on a card or something like that, are not going to truly understand how absolutely revolutionary, how amazing this quote is. At that point in time, 95% of the fucking world was under some form of monarchy. The idea that anything should be ruled by the people was groundbreaking. This was not what everybody was doing. This was after, or this was before the 1776. This was before all of that shit that we all celebrate. We don't celebrate this for some reason. I wonder why that is. But maybe it's because people just don't want to think about it. Maybe because it only happened in Connecticut in a small colony, people just don't think about it. But that doesn't change the fact that Thomas Hooker created essentially, not just with that comment, but created what became the founding document that we would draw from, our founding fathers would draw from to create our Constitution, of the United States. He had a Constitution of Connecticut, which saying Connecticut Constitution is a tongue twister to a certain degree for me. So if I fumble it, I apologize. But Connecticut had its own constitution. Hartford, Connecticut had its own constitution. You got to remember, this is well before anybody had fucking cars or the internet or anything like that. It was very much, local. And what's crazy is that one of the reasons why they ended up forming and founding Hartford, Connecticut was because Thomas Hooker said he didn't like the fact that they were so close, like towns were so close together in Massachusetts. Everything was so close. He didn't like that feeling. So he had to get out. And when he did, he wanted to go as far up as he could. He wanted to get away from people, which when you think about how far apart people were back then, it's a pretty strong statement to how annoying fucking people can be, right? Now, I think that it's absolutely stunning, and it's very important that people understand this part of history. But I wanted to touch on something else that he said, because I think that in today's world, while this sentiment is one that has been echoed throughout time, and now we almost take it for granted that the idea of the people running things, we take it for granted so much so that we have abdicated our responsibilities and just allow people to tell us what to do. Like, that's what we do in America now. We don't actually go and protest. We don't actually go and fight for our rights. We just sit back on our fat asses and, play on our phones and watch our shows, and then, struggle with finances and worry about what's going to happen next, but not actually do anything about it. So that's what America is today. But I wanted to touch on this other quote. So let me get to that before I get too sidetracked with shitty stuff. Pay attention to this one because it's really important. Now, he says men in this, and he absolutely means men because he didn't really think about women at that point in time. But this is for everybody. This is for everybody. He means men. Men absolutely need to hear this, but this is for everybody. Everybody should take this advice. Now, the language on this is a little weird, so I'm going to read it twice, but just try to pay attention. Thomas Hooker once said, "Nay, men are so far from musing of their sins that they disdain this practice and scoff at it. What say they? If all were of your mind, what should become of us? Shall we always be poring on our corruptions?" Now, I'm going to read that again, and then I'll explain it. "Nay, men are so far from musing of their sins that they disdain this practice and scoff at it. What say they, if all were of your mind, what should become of us? Shall we be always poring on our corruptions?" What he means here is, and I'll get to it briefly, is basically we don't want to look at the sins. We don't want to look at the issues. We don't want to look at the problems. We look on them with disdain. We scoff at the idea of looking at things that we consider to be problems or sins. We do this on the national level. We literally did it yesterday for 4th of July. We do it, each one of us does it as individuals. We don't want to look at the dark parts, but where does that lead us? What say you? What shall become of us if that's the way we are? If we refuse to see what we've done wrong, if we refuse to look at our sins, if we refuse to see where we have fucked up, how can we get better? That's the point. That's what he's saying here. You must look where you have gone wrong. You must look at what you have done, how you have hurt others, and you must make amends. You must understand that the only way to make things better is to see where the problem is. Happy birthday to Thomas Hooker. And to the rest of you, take care of yourself. Take care of others. I'll talk to you soon.